Hi Guardian Ashes Weekly fans, Max here. Some good news is the England side was announced after we recorded this podcast, but Will Jacks is in. So all the stuff we say about Will Jacks is good. The bad news is that Usman Khawaja was ruled out after we recorded the pod, so any stuff we say about him is less relevant. Even better news, the pod's really good, so listen to it or watch it. Thank you. Hello and welcome to the Guardian Ashes Weekly, supported by Qantas, the spirit of Australia. To Brisbane, forget that England haven't won at the Gabba since 1986. Forget that Australia are the best team in the world with the pink ball. Forget that Mark Wood is injured. This is where the comeback begins. Question then, who comes in for Wood? Will Travis Head open for Australia? Apart from its pink, what is different about the ball? And how important is it to avoid batting at dusk? Have England learned anything? Will anyone ever leave a ball outside the off stump ever again? Would you rather be rubbish or arrogant? And would anybody want to go to Canberra? I'm Max Rushden. Let's look ahead to the second test on the Guardian Ashes Weekly. On the panel today, Guardian cricket writer Emma John. Hey, Emma.
Hello.
Welcome from the grade cricketer, top of the sports charts in Australia, Sam Perry. Welcome, Pez.
Hi, Max.
And the Guardian Australia's Geoff Lemon. All right, Geoff?
Yes, nice to see you as usual.
Okay, we've had sort of, 10 days to digest what happened in Perth. That's a lot of digesting, Emma. It still feels like such a lost opportunity, Emma, but I don't know how you've processed it.
Well, I mean, look, I haven't processed it. I'm in big time denial, Max. I mean, I genuinely, there's a funny thing about everyone talking about what do the teams do, with this big long gap, especially, England not going to Canberra and there's this big gap between matches. Will no one think of the fans? What are we supposed to do? Our emotions are kind of like, we don't really know where to settle. And I think that's a big part of where there's been so much noise, right? Why everybody's got themselves so worked up about all these various issues of going to Canberra and not going to Canberra. It's because honestly, there's kind of, there's nothing else that we can fix on. And what I think is really interesting is that, if England had won in 2 days, I think a lot of the fans who are, making a big fuss now and are like, this is terrible and, give us back our money for the days that we didn't get to see, they'd be, England fans would be thrilled. I'm an England fan. If I'd gone out to Perth and England had won in 2 days and I'd had 3 more days to go to the beach, that to me that's the perfect scenario. I suppose, maybe I'm not thinking widely enough here.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big if, I guess, Sam, isn't it? Because England didn't win in 2 days. What have you made of the noise? I think it's been quite interesting that there was so much criticism, but then there's almost a reaction to the reaction, and it's almost gone so full circle now that I'm fully basballed again.
Yeah, I think the way that England plays should leave fans feeling hopeful, because I think history dictates that England, both its players and its nation as a whole, must now start to commence the demoralisation process. In Australia, the sun feels sharper, hotter, the sky's bluer, everybody a little coarser towards them, but the way these guys play, they've almost inoculated themselves from outside influence, and that should actually give fans hope. They will come to Brisbane. They will do the same thing again. I don't play cards like Geoff, but I think if you double down, eventually things will fall your way. And I actually think that Canberra was a trap for England, and they've been canny enough to see it. I very much acknowledge what people say about respecting the fixture, respecting that it's the Prime Minister's fixture that he didn't even turn up to owing to marriage. But if they flew to Canberra, they would have been met with 10-degree weather, balls that don't go above the knee, that would have been habitualised to get on that front foot press again, only to come back to the Gabba where it comes through the chest and be dismissed. I mean, the moment we saw Sam Constas bowling his first over in professional cricket round the wicket, full tosses, I think was the moment that their decision to go to the Sunshine Coast was vindicated.
Yeah. Do you agree with that, Geoff? Because it's funny. I was so angry, probably because I just listened to, Aggers and Michael Vaughan tell me how outrageous it is that England aren't going to Canberra. And then other people saying, actually, it's really different in there. It's there's actually no point going. So I sort of agree with Sam now.
I think maybe broadly we've all come around to this, and maybe this is the benefit of having that huge gap that Sam talked about, where the cycle can go from everybody being angry. Had they played 4 days later, they would have played a test straight off the back of having the snot kicked out of them for 4 days. But then they've had the extra week for things to go full circle. And in the end, what would have happened? Either they would have lost 7 to Peter Siddle, and that would have been embarrassing, or they would have smashed like 400 runs against Peter Siddle, and everyone would have said it didn't matter and it didn't count because it was a rubbish bowling attack of players who'd never played cricket before. And that was kind of true to some extent as well. So the calibre of the attack they faced would not have proven anything had they beaten them up, and would have proven way too much had they not beaten them up. And maybe it is better just to go and get bombed in the nets, except they probably didn't. They probably played golf the whole time.
Haven't they been vindicated by what happened in that England 11 fixture? That, essentially, the England Lions, who are the rookies, scored some pretty easy runs. The one person who really needed to impress, which was Jacob Bethel, nicked off for about 16. So that didn't help anybody. There were no wickets for Josh Tongue, who was the one bowler that the one pace bowler who they're thinking about bringing in for Brisbane. So it just feels like they were completely vindicated by hindsight, that it would have been a big old waste of their time.
And it turns out the big villain of all of this is Peter Siddle. Who knew? He thought he was going to get off scot-free for this series. What did you make, Sam, of Ben Stokes? Because he's sort of after the test, and obviously when a microphone is shoved under your face straight after losing, especially in that manner, you behave slightly differently to when you've had a bit of time to think about it. But I thought he sounded quite circumspect and, sort of acknowledged there was a different argument about Canberra and about, fans and how they feel about the side, when he sort of said, I'd rather be called rubbish, but not arrogant. I thought he sort of played that quite well.
Yeah, I also thought when Aggers followed him up about going to Canberra, he was well within his rights to say, I literally just answered that question, which is true. And that will obviously get spun as him sounding terse and rattled. I mean, everything gets its meaning following the performance. I mean, as Emma was saying, the England fans' enjoyment of Australia now gets its meaning following England's loss. I think Stokes has been completely fine in his comments, but because they've lost, everything is going to get spun. I was curious to me that he clapped back at the accusations of being arrogant. I mean, firstly, Australian cricket has been built on arrogance. I don't think anyone in Australia cares if a team is arrogant, frankly.
What an arrogant thing to say there.
Well,
unless they lose.
Yeah, again, and it gets spun in retrospect. I mean, I do think there is an argument that England's style and its rejection of... It's almost full rejection of any truth of cricket that's come before it could be argued to be arrogant, but I also think that no one really cares. So I was curious that he clapped back at that. I was also curious that he seemed to concede that he'd made mistakes in his captaincy in the first game, which is not something that I'd normally associated with Stokes either. Normally, they are sort of a fundamentalist truth to how they play. So I would be buoyed by that as an England fan. I would see that as evidence that perhaps they are learning something.
I think it's actually very Stokes to say, hey, look at me. This was my fault. This is all about my captaincy was wrong. We could have bowled to head differently. I could have changed my plans better. But it didn't say anything about the batters. And, it was the batters that lost it, not the bowlers. So in some ways, I thought he was missing the point entirely.
Even Joe Root, who's normally, the most reasonable of the lot, but talking about the shot that got him out chopping on and how it was just a good way to try to get on top of the bowlers. And, well, another day I might have just nicked that past the stumps and the keeper for 4. Yeah, you might have, but that's not a good way to structure your innings where you go, I'm just going to play the shots that I say nick towards the cordon. And on a good day, they might just go through the cordon and not be caught. On another day, I might not chop back onto my stumps. It's not the way that you're trying to play. It's not the way that you're setting up to play, particularly having faced 10 balls on a pitch where you haven't made any in the first innings and it's bouncing a lot. It didn't seem to indicate a whole lot of a deep thought process about what had gone on and just how match losing that Root dismissal in that cluster of dismissals in the second innings was.
Yeah, although some of the sensible criticism has been about, look, in the India series, England did bat kind of sensible baseball. You know, there were periods where they built innings where they actually occupied the crease a bit more, and that's what people were hoping for. And even if they don't publicly self-reflect too much, you imagine they might do that.
Yeah, this is now when we get a return to baseball with brains, as I think it got called. And I think, you know, in some ways, look, Stokes came out everyone said, oh, it's really unusual that the captain, you know, comes out this far ahead of a test and it's a PR exercise. I think it's very sensible. I think it's kind of good captaincy. It's good off-field captaincy, essentially, what he's doing. And I think there must be a load of things that they're talking about that they're not talking to us about, right? Sure. That's the kind of thing that, you know, you think they don't want to talk. They don't want to say the thing that everyone's thinking, which is, can you just do this the sensible way now? Yeah.
What do you expect, Sam?
I think that in England's like thinking positively for England here, they've experienced such a wild, disastrous capitulation that they will be forced to kind of bring some sort of like reflection to the next game. And I think that it reminds me of the 2023 series, although the manner of the loss at Edgbaston was different. There was such a wildness to Stokes' declaration, and there was such a response to it. It almost forced them to just tighten up and finesse some of those rougher edges to their game. So, you know, I thought this loss was similar in that sense. I'd expect that the next time they're in a situation where they can press home an advantage against Australia, there might be more circumspection. But as I say that, I realise that's in complete opposition to the way they think. So that moment that everyone's isolated now in the Test match where they were 100 ahead, 9 wickets in hand, it seems pretty clear now that they were taking that opportunity to drive home the advantage in a you know, in a way that was, you know, meant to kind of emotionally damage Australia. 1 million runs at 10 and over, and they kind of got ahead of themselves, got greedy, and maybe that greed will be tempered if they find themselves in that situation again. Maybe not.
Yeah, well, they have to find themselves in that situation again, I guess, which might be tricky. Geoff, Mark Wood ruled out the second test. How big a blow is that for England, do you think?
Yeah, it's a curious one because you would have imagined them breaking up his appearances anyway. So him playing, say, tests 1, 3 and 5 wouldn't be the wildest suggestion at the start of the tour, a la Jasprit Bumrah in England recently. The problem with keeping back a trump card to play Test 5 is you might have already been annihilated by then. So probably front-loading that a bit more would have been the way. And I don't even know if it's, I mean, they were sort of coy about whether it's injury or whether it's precautionary and they want to be careful with him and all the rest of it. He bowled 11 overs. Can you have a guy come in and play a test match if bowling 11 overs means he needs a rest after the second day? Because he could have had to bowl for 3 more days. You know, there is that prospect in test cricket that it might have been a 5-day match and he might have had to bowl 35 overs. And I'm surprised that if there's not actually an injury, if it's just medical conservatism, that seems an odd thing to have when you've got, you know, an 11-day break between test matches for a guy who's bowled 1 over for each of those days. It seems a peculiar kind of setup. But I suppose they've got enough bowlers with swing as a weapon that they think, well, they can cover for the pink ball game and just make absolutely sure, just take every possible precaution to have him right when they go to Adelaide, which might not be as bowler-friendly or as swing-friendly.
Emma, you mentioned that Josh Tongue didn't get any wickets in Canberra, and Ali Martin did a piece saying that Will Jacks looks likely to be the favourite. There was a kind of bowl-off between him and Shoaib Bashir yesterday. You imagine with sort of the X-Factor judges, Louis Walsh and Simon Cowell there, just going, you've picked the wrong delivery there, Shoaib. So for casual Ashes watchers, right, for fans who don't really watch county cricket or don't really watch anything but the Ashes, who is Will Jacks? Tell me he bats like Chris Tavares, please.
So yeah, I think that you know fans will sort of tend to know him more for his batting than his finger spin bowling, right? So actually, the idea of him coming in and adding a bit of depth and maybe batting at 8 and you know, and this is an England team that is supposed to be all about its batting, but we might be just about to like put an extra batting all-rounder in there. I mean, he's played 2 test matches, and he actually is kind of you know, in those 2 tests, the Pakistan tests in 2022, he's the first England debutant spinner to take a 5-fer on test debut since 1993, and he kind of does this, you know, kind of all round job. I mean, mostly he takes 6 wickets and he scores a higher score of 31, but he's been kind of like, he's been playing white ball, and that's the thing that people know him for. It's just really a question of if you're gonna have a spinner in the side, which, like we say, you've had the 2 spinners bowling at Stokes in the nets, then I think, you know, if you're looking to bolster the batting as well, Will Jacks is the one you go for, right?
And Sam, England have looked at what the West Indies did when they won in Brisbane, and they brought in a sort of occasional off spinner, if that's unfair, on Kevin Sinclair, who I haven't watched every ball he's bowled, and he's like a decent batsman, and he helped West Indies win that test match.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny when we talk about this England side, we bring people in and we talk about their skills and their capabilities and their features. But I think about Will Jacks, the person here. It's a tough assignment to not really be part of the team too often, other than specific situations. The seeming abandoning of Shoaib Bashir after 4 years of investment, and say, hey, Will, we just want a little bit more batting, so can you go at 6 and over against Mitchell Starc with the pink ball, probably in tough conditions, and the rest of the bowlers. And when you bowl as well, as the ball gets soft and flat and the conditions become difficult for fast bowling, can you make sure you constrain Australia there as well, even though you're mainly a batter? I mean, I just think it's a tough scenario for him to come into, and it makes Kevin Sinclair from the West Indies look excellent, an excellent player. I do think that people presume the pink ball test in Australia is just a carnival for Mitchell Starc to run riot. But at the Gabba, it hasn't necessarily been the case. It's the one game Australia has lost in pink ball cricket. The other 2 that they won weren't necessarily convincing. And then when the West Indies did it, you had this scenario where clumps of wickets were lost in the first 10 to 20 overs from both innings in both sides, and then the next 30 to 50 overs was supreme batting. So I suppose they've picked Jacks, and both teams will pick their teams with that scenario in mind, because the last thing to happen in cricket, therefore, is the next thing that's going to happen.
Of course, yeah. Geoff?
It's going to be a really nice bit of timing for us, because the England squad will probably be announced before this podcast goes out. So it's, you know, it's good for us to really get into what might happen. But if it is the Will Jacks Kevin Sinclair scenario, then Kevin Sinclair did backflips. So fundamentally, can Will Jacks do backflips? The Will Jacks flips. If he can do that, then I'll be happy. That will be a good inclusion. But yeah, frankly, this England team needs someone who can come in and try to hit 6 over long on off the 3rd ball they face. That's what's been lacking in this England side, is that lack of initiative. That's what's really going to strengthen the batting, is a guy who opens in T10 cricket in innings in Abu Dhabi where 7 blokes get stumped and comes in and whacks 48 off 10. That's the kind of thing that they want in this England side. So, you know, that may happen. Maybe they go with the quicks, and all of this conversation is redundant if Josh Tongue plays. But I think you come back to, and we'll probably talk about the pink ball a little bit, like what Sam says. Particularly at Brisbane, it's been flat before. Pakistan got set bloody 500 a few years ago and nearly chased it. They made 450 batting last in a pink ball game at Brisbane. And it depends on the pitch, and we've had a couple of cooler summers in Brisbane in a row, and wetter lead-ups to the test match where that can affect how much juice there is in the surface and all the rest of it, all of those strange, difficult to quantify, difficult to track factors, but it can be flat in Brisbane. It may not be flat in Brisbane, but it can be flat there, and it can be flat with a pink ball in the middle of an innings. So maybe you do get a situation where Will Jacks can come in and belt 80.
I hope he does now. I hope he does, just to spite you, Geoff. Yes, son?
I was just going to say, Brisbane is the best ground for retrofitting any tactic you want to suit conditions, because the Gabba is home to every single condition that exists in cricket. Apparently, you can have a green monster, you can have humid conditions, it can go flat after 30 overs. It seams a lot, and if it seams, it means that it spins. The ball, you still get a lot of bounce, but between 30 to 50, it's quite good to bat. And don't forget the drainage is good at the Gabba as well, even though there's storms. So and you will hear before this Test match and during it every single type of condition that exists at the Gabba, what it used to be, what it currently is, and you just use that to retrofit your preferred 11 when you're speaking to anybody.
Well, the Guardian Drainage Weekly is something I've pitched, and maybe this is the chance for it. We'll start part 2 talking about the pink ball. Hello, Max Rushden here.
And I'm Geoff Lemon.
The Guardian Ashes Weekly is supported by Qantas, the spirit of Australia, and that's not an empty claim. You don't have to wait until you get there. Qantas aims to showcase what's great about the country the moment you step on board. Which brings up a question, Geoff. What do you reckon is the best thing about Australia, putting cricket to one side?
I think that you have to say the food. We've got great producers, fresh ingredients. It's part of the Australian way of life in the modern world, and Australian chefs, Australian producers have had an influence on food around the world.
And you can definitely expect great food from down under on a Qantas flight, featuring menus specially designed for healthier long-haul travelling. What else, Geoff?
I'm going to nominate, controversially, Australian hospitality, which might not always be completely present at the ground if you're an England player. But I think once you get outside the cricket ground, people are, in the main, very welcoming, happy to have visitors and happy to chat to you about where you're from, what you're doing and where you should be going.
And there's lots of that on a Qantas flight to Australia. Nobody knows Australia like Qantas. Book now at qantas.com. Welcome to part 2 of the Guardian Ashes Weekly, brought to you by Qantas, the spirit of Australia. So can someone tell me, colour aside, because I'm across that, what is different about the pink ball? I'll go to you, Geoff.
Well, aside from the fact that Chris Rogers can't see it, there are a few bits and pieces. Mainly, it's about lacquer. And I know people get excited when they talk about lacquer on a cricket ball. So you've got a kookaburra, it's made of leather, it's got a bit of cork in the middle, it's got twine tied really tightly around it. Then they put the two halves together, then they stitch them by hand. I've been down there and watched them do it. It's a remarkable process. So, they're still hand-stitched. The test balls are still hand-stitched. But so much of how a cricket ball behaves is down to the level of lacquer on it, whether you need to wear the lacquer off, like with a Duke's ball, or whether it's better with the lacquer on, like a kookaburra tends to be with the red ball. But because it's got that pink colouring, you can't dye the leather and have it as deeply impregnated with the ink as you can when you put red ink into leather. It's more of a sort of sheen finish that's put on top of the leather, and it doesn't permeate the leather in the same way. So you need more lacquer to protect that ball, which means it can swing more initially in those earlier stages, and it might retain a level of swing later into an innings, particularly once you hit an evening session where it's a bit harder to pick up the trajectory out of the hand. It's just I imagine it's a different neurological process really for a batter to try to pick up that pink ball at night. And as the atmospheric conditions can change and breezes come in through sunset, crepuscular weather activity, that can also affect the behaviour of the ball. So there's a fair bit going on.
Yeah, and dusk is the problem, Emma. It's like sharks, isn't it? You just don't go swimming at dusk, and you don't face the pink ball at dusk. These are the two lessons.
Exactly. And from what I understand, there's something about the way the lights reflect off it that I understand is an issue, and then also and that it's Alistair Cook has said that it's you can't really make out the seam. That's the thing that's the hardest to make out as it's coming towards you, and that's the thing that you're looking for to give you a little bit of a clue about what the bowler's bowling. And so it's very interesting, isn't it? Because Steve Smith is going to wear these eye blacks like Shivnarine Chanderpaul wore, and I think that is to stop this dazzle, right? To stop the dazzle that's going to come from the light.
Mm-hmm. It has to be said that, like in the annals of Steve Smith's idiosyncrasies, this isn't even on the podium of strange things that he does. And as we said before, if he makes runs, it will be seen as a masterstroke, and if he doesn't make runs, we will say that his eyes were literally painted on. So I've since heard that there's been a Mythbusters episode about the efficacy of these eye blacks, and that there's some evidence it does help you distinguish light and dark. And then that's given way to Manus Labuschagne talking about placebo effects. Greg Chappell's writing articles about 1,000 lux light or something. It allows those of us of a certain disposition to just start talking about the real strangeness and vagaries of cricket. So I'm very much here for it.
Can someone just explain? Because there'll be lots of people listening going, I still don't know what they are. What are they? Just two sort of stickers under your eyes?
Black stickers that sit right on your cheekbone. I mean, if you were talking about makeup, you would say they would go where you'd put highlighter. So not where the blusher goes, because the blusher goes on the cheeks.
Yeah, okay.
The apples of your cheeks.
Right.
But if you were putting on highlighter, you would put it just sort of below where your eye bags are, if you have eye bags. Which some of us do, and that's where they sort of sit.
The idea is that black absorbs light, so light doesn't reflect off black surfaces. It's absorbed by it, so the light that's bouncing into your face, reflected off the ground, doesn't reflect sort of into your eyes or across the surface of the eye, and it reduces the amount of glare that might interfere with your vision. That's the theory.
Right. So does it, Sam? Does it matter? Because I heard sort of Tim Payne saying a bit. Like Alex the cook was saying, that you can actually see the ball, right? It's pink and there's bright lights, but you can't see the seam. It always amazes me that when Mitchell Stark's bowling, anyone's got time to see what the seam is doing.
Yeah, I think you've got to really, as an average person, you have to really detect the subtext of this conversation among like former players, where what they're really wanting you to understand is that they can see the seam when the ball's delivered to them. I've played cricket. I've never seen the seam. It's just a blur of a thing coming towards me. You hear this with tennis players talking about seeing the writing on the ball, or people talking about the silver of the kookaburra. None of us have seen that. This is just a way for ex-players to show the superiority of their eyesight.
Right.
I can't see the seam here. I can see it there. It's anyone pretending that they can be part of that conversation and they weren't a professional cricketer is lying. I don't know.
But does it actually, Geoff? Does it really matter when you bat? I mean, is there there are tactics? Obviously, we saw that with that. Stokes declaration in that game. Like, is it really important, the toss and everything?
It can be. It depends on the game. And I mean, I think I've been at all of the pink ball games that Australia have played, and they've played out in some wildly different ways. Joe Root's comments the other day were that it was easier to see the seam because it was a black seam on pink, but maybe that's during the daytime, not so much in the evening. So there have been pink ball tests when the evening is really challenging and a player really has to grind, like Usman Khawaja against South Africa at Adelaide Oval back in 2016 now, where it had to play really, really cautious innings through a couple of evening sessions. There have been games where the evening session's been relatively easy to score. That Pakistan game, I think everybody from number 8 to 11 made their highest test score, and a bunch of that was through an evening session, and that wasn't a problem for them. Jamaica, not long ago, as soon as the sun went down, it was absolute carnage. There were 83 wickets would fall in the evening session of that test match against West Indies, even though they got bowled out for 27 in daylight once they resumed on the final morning of the test. So it is all over the place. I think anybody who's too effusive about you have to do this or you have to do that in a pink ball test match, they're also lying. So there's a lot of lying goes on when people talk about cricket. I can see the seam on the ball, yes.
You're calling Stuart Broad a liar because he's very adamant, isn't he? He's absolutely adamant.
Sure.
You've got to.
Has he played in all of the Test matches that Australia have played in pink ball cricket? He's played in a couple of them, but the one that I can recall is Joss Buttler batted very deep into the game during the Adelaide Test the last time on the last tour when they played a couple of pink ball games, and then Hobart was much more of a destruction derby sort of situation with that pink ball and was over in a couple of days, but that's also because England were mentally shot at that point, and Sam Billings arrived to find this absolute wasteland of a dressing room where everybody had already given up while he was trying to celebrate winning his first Test cap. So there's a wide variance.
I definitely think that the idea that, and I think this is kind of the Stuart Broad sort of, method, is like you control when you bowl. is I don't understand how that's a strategy, because for a start, it's absolutely dependent on you winning the toss, and then it's dependent on you batting well. And I just don't understand this whole control when you bowl. There's no sort of, yes, England have done it once very effectively in Mount Maunganui. When they sort of scored a run a minute, didn't they? And then they had the ball in hand both sessions in twilight, and Broad ran through them on the last evening, the penultimate evening. But you can't. That's not really a strategy for Test cricket.
It brings an extra element into the match, which is that it puts batting time back on the table as something that actually matters. Whereas with this England side, the way they've always approached it, time, irrelevant, screw it. We don't worry about time, we worry about runs. We score them as quickly as possible, then we get back on the field and wonder why our bowlers are knackered. That's been the England approach to Test cricket for the last 3 years, is one of repeated confusion at the same problem occurring. But batting time is something else, and this is a situation where you're incentivised to go, well, it doesn't actually matter how many you score in, say, the middle session of the day, but if you can bat through it, if you can just make sure that you occupy through that period and you're coming out with the new ball during that evening session, or even sort of coming in later in an evening session, so maybe you've got an hour with a new ball at night and then you've still got a newish ball in the morning, those kind of considerations can come into it and actually can make the game more interesting because there's more tactical stuff at play.
Well, and it also makes it curious that people keep saying about it. Players who are both in this series and have played in these games past keep saying, it's not traditional Test cricket. It's not like, it's not like playing traditional Test cricket. Whereas what you've described is like very old school Test cricket. Yeah.
Can I ask we just talked about occupying, time and occupying the crease. And I've been interested in all the noise, Sam, that there hasn't been enough chat about the difference between how England bowled in their first innings and their second innings. Because when it was 205 to win, I thought, well, if England bowl like they did in the first innings, they haven't bowled for very long. This is on. I was there going, this is on. Who cares about Travis Head? And then it wasn't just one bowler's pace. The pace of every single bowler was down. And so clearly, if you're England, surely you go, we have to occupy the crease so our bowlers have a bit more time. Even if they didn't bowl for very long, they just weren't ready to bowl again, unless they only had one innings in them for the whole series, in which case it's kind of moot.
Look, it was a really curious one, and I just want to back that up as well. A lot of people are wise after the fact, but at that innings break, in the press box, there were several people of serious Test match experience saying words to me to the effect of England have 40 too many, having just witnessed what they produced in the first innings. And it wasn't just what England had produced in the first innings. It was also a decent memory of what Australia's top order has looked like for several years. Starting on the back foot, literally and figuratively, with Usman Khawaja being strangled, blokes in the middle order in far too early. And a lot of question marks over the form of guys. I mean, before Travis Head did what he did, there was several, there was lots of column inches given to his most recent scores over the last little while in all formats. So against that backdrop, 200 looked okay. I don't think people were saying at the time, everybody knows that the final, that tea time on day two is the best time to bat. All right, we do know that historically, but given the way the game was going, it looked like England were going to get the job done, or at least it was going to be really close and it was going to be done that night. I wonder whether they saw the writing on the wall early, these guys, and put the cue in the rack a little bit. I'd take Geoff's point as well. They were, this wasn't your point, Geoff. This is everybody else's, that perhaps they hadn't had enough time to rest to come out and explode at 145 to 150 Ks. I wonder if the answer's somewhere in the middle. Perhaps they were capable of something, something a little bit more forceful, but the damage might have already been done, after 9 or 10 overs. I'm not really sure, but I would take more from what they produced in the first innings than the second.
Sure. And to Australia, then, we sort of mentioned Travis Head and Usman Khawaja. Interestingly, the ICC gave the Perth pitch its highest rating, and then Khawaja called it a piece of shit, Geoff. Who opens for Australia?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny that the guy couldn't make a run there the last couple of years, didn't like the pitch, while everybody else thought it was pretty good. That's just an interesting divergence of views, and people can read into that as they will. He's not shy about a comment here or there. But in terms of what they're doing, I mean, he's in the squad. It's the same as the Weatherall situation before the series. If he's in the squad, he's playing. There's no reason they'd pick him in the squad and not have him play unless he is walking up the stairs on the morning of and his back goes again, which has to be a concern. There has to be a possibility, right, that as soon as he's under the pressure of a match itself, that injury could recur. But I think if they were worried about that, they wouldn't have picked him in the squad to begin with. They would have just put any speculation to bed. Kawad's there, he'll open, Head will bat where he normally bats, and any other changes will be situation dependent.
Which feels to me, Emma, like I'd rather Khawaja was there. I mean, I know it's such recency bias, right? It's just what I've just seen Travis Head do, but you feel like you've got Khawaja's number.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, it wasn't just about the batting, was it? It was about the drop slip catches and him looking really miserable. You want the guy who's kind of looking really miserable in the team. It's really interesting. You said at the start, it really felt like a lost opportunity. And of course, that is exactly what it felt like in that first test. And it was, Cummins is out, Josh Hazlewood is out, Khawaja is completely off the pace, off form. There's an England 5-man pace attack firing as it's never fired before. And now going into this second test, we look at it and we go, well, it's, that was a real lost opportunity because obviously now we don't have Mark Wood and et cetera, and Head's batted himself back into form. But the fact is there's still quite a lot of those things that were the gift horse in the first place. No Cummins, no Hazlewood, a slightly ropey looking Khawaja. Those gift horses have been given back to us again. England just cannot.
Hope. It's hope.
Yeah, England can't waste that opportunity twice. I just, I don't know. I do sound like a mad person right now.
You need it. You need to take that optimism and that possibility. I think if you looked at the start of the series and you said if England could come out of Brisbane, Perth at 1-1 somehow, that would be a tremendous victory. Like to get through the two least likely venues for them to get a result. And in a way, they kind of have to win one of those in order to be in the series, right? So because they're not going to draw anything, they've got to win one of those first two. So they've still got the opportunity to win one of the first two and then to tell everybody that we're idiots, they're geniuses, and stick it up, everybody.
And they love to do the unexpected. I mean, this is their whole shtick is do the unexpected. And actually, the more unexpected thing is to win in Brisbane. That would be the more unexpected thing than to win in Perth.
Yeah, I mean, we say they have to win one of these first two, and it feels like it has to be this one. I mean, it feels like we can't, it feels like Perth is gone now. And Emma says that you can't give up these gift horses twice, but the thing is you can't you, Sam?
They can lose this game and still win. That's just mathematical, really. And I do think that the way that they play makes that more possible than in other times, than in times gone by. But yeah, I mean, we are just, if they win this game, they're more likely to win the series. I mean, the Khawaja thing's super interesting. The contrast between the way he is presenting himself with Travis Head makes his inclusion all the more stark. This is a guy that he has probably spent the last 3 to 5 years explicating at any opportunity of how difficult it is to bat atop the order in the Australian team, that there's double lacquer on the ball, that there's more live grass. The data does support that it is harder to do, right? So, don't get me wrong, but most of his utterances are about how hard it is and that you don't understand how difficult it is. For this to be the guy that then walks off the field with his hand on the small of his back, limping with an L5S1 disc issue, and then his successor, whose only public utterances is to say, I'll just do what's best for the team, to come out and blitz it with 120 off 80, does make that contrast really stark. For Australia to then say, we're going to stick with what we do. We're not going to self-select a scalp. We're not going to retire somebody. Just goes to show how much they value that calmness and composure and not bending to drama at the time, even though it appears as though a solution to Australia's top order issues is literally staring them in the face. And the fact that Travis Head is saying now, whereas he previously didn't do this, Head is saying now, I'm happy to do it, makes it, I think it's interesting that Australia is risking a test match to basically give Khawaja procedural fairness. And I don't think you'll find many people seeing him as a guy that can influence the series materially. So now that I've said that, I look forward to his 100 at the Gabba.
Yeah, well, procedural fairness and drainage are the two things that we really care about. But before we wrap up, Geoff, anything else we need to look? Zach Crawley, I'm waiting for the applause when Zach Crawley gets a run. It may not happen in this test, but hopefully by Melbourne. Joe Root, obviously,
it'd be great on a packed Boxing Day test. Fourth test of the series. He finally nudges one off the hip and gets down the other end. It'll be I might be one of the 5 or 6 remaining. I wouldn't say Crawley backers necessarily, because I'm not brimming with confidence that he will do something, but it's a bit like post-apocalyptic. There's a bunch of billionaires in a bunker in New Zealand. There's a handful of us left going, well, things could work out. Climate change might still be a myth. Sure, New York City's underwater, but maybe it's just a natural confluence of events, and we didn't actually have much to do with it. Let's just stay here for the next 800 years. I want it to happen because it was such an outrageous and ridiculous thing to keep picking him in this team for like the last 3 years without ever making any runs, purely because he made 80 odd at the SCG 4 years ago. That's the reason. That's why he's still here, because they're like, well, we think he can do it in Australia. We think when it's quick and bouncy and he's facing better quality fast bowlers, he can smash them. At one point in the series, one innings, he'll be able to do it and he'll win us a game. So I want to see the experiment lived through to its logical conclusion. He's got to play all 5. He's got to get back to Sydney. I hope he makes a ton in the second innings at Sydney in a game that's already gone, and then they have to pick him for 4 more years. It's just too interesting to give up now. We can't give up now. We cannot give up on the experiment now. We've all invested. We're all in. Give him the 10 innings. Don't rob us of this delight. Let's see.
It's like Dragon's Den when they say, and how much of your own money have you invested in this business? And they say £25 million. And Peter Jones is like this going, oh no, it's a life. Zach Crawley's a lifestyle business. He's, really get out while you can. Okay, Sam, what's going to happen?
I think England will try and refine slightly, but their compulsivity will still bring them undone eventually. I think Australia has wily, experienced players who will ultimately prevail with a little bit of extra knowledge about playing in these pink decks, and but we'll see some rays of light from England, but not enough.
Emma?
I think it's going to be a weird test, and England are going to do weird things, and then they're going to win it in a weird way. This is where I'm at. I'm kind of a little bit at this point, like, how they have this habit of winning tests in this kind of like very, we call them heists, in this very Ocean's 11 way. Like they look like they've given it away. They declare at ridiculous points. They seem to lose wickets on purpose. Well, I'm just telling myself that this first test is all just part of the plan. Like losing at Perth, that was part of the plan. It's Ocean's 11. You make it look like everything's gone wrong, but actually secretly you're doing your burglary, behind the scenes.
We're lulling you, Geoff. What do you reckon? Last word to you.
Oh, I love this. I love this idea that this has all been a hoax. Look over here. Look, actually, we've broken into the vault of runs that's under Brisbane, that's 60 stories underneath Brisbane City. We've been stealing all of the runs from Brisbane in the meantime. England are getting a start at none for 402 first ball. This is an incredible plan. I'm looking forward to it.
All right, guys. Well, thanks for your time. Let's see what happens. We'll be back after the test. Maybe 2 days, maybe 3, maybe certainly not 5. Let's not be silly, guys. But look out for the drainage. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Emma.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sam.
Thanks, Max. Thanks, everyone.
If you want more from Sam and Ian Higgins, listen to The Grade Cricketer when you're not listening to The Guardian Ashes Weekly, of course. Cheers, Geoff.
Thank you. Yes, it's going to be 5 days. We'll have a few little rain showers in there. Come on, we're going to get to day 5. Let's do it, Max.
Okay, if you want to get in touch, ashes.weekly@theguardian.com. You can find us on YouTube, follow Guardian Sport on Instagram and TikTok. Ashes Weekly is produced by Nick Harmon. Our executive producer is Daniel Simo. The theme tune is by Rudy Zigadlo. Back after the second test.